Hello and welcome to SnoozyTor, the channel where history becomes your bedtime story. Tonight, we're stepping back into the 1940s into a world of wooden aircraft, freezing barracks, and skies lit by searchlights. Imagine lying in a thin bunk in wartime England, only 22 years old, knowing that tomorrow you'll climb into a Mosquito, a wooden wonder faster than most German fighters, yet fragile enough to splinter under a single mistake. These pilots flew into the heart of enemy territory at treetop level, dodging flak, night fighters, and the endless fear of never coming back. This isn't just the story of aircraft and missions. It's about courage and exhaustion, victories and losses, and the weight of memory carried long after the war ended. So find a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let your body sink into rest as we journey together through the life of a World War II Mosquito pilot. A story of survival, sacrifice, and the fragile line between night terror and morning peace. The first sensation is cold. Not the bracing chill of a winter morning at home, but a damp, bone-deep cold that lingers in every breath and every movement. You wake on a thin mattress in a drafty wooden barracks somewhere in the English countryside, 1943. The war has already consumed years of your youth, but for you the true test is only beginning. The barracks smell of unwashed bodies, stale tobacco, and wet wool uniforms that never quite dry in the constant British drizzle. Your blanket scratches against your skin, offering little warmth, and the dull ache in your stomach reminds you that breakfast will be meager at best. Around you, other young men stir, faces pale and drawn, eyes too old for their age. They laugh, they mutter, they pull on boots stiff with cold. Some will be here next week, some will not. Statistics are no comfort. You know them by heart because every man in the Royal Air Force knows them. The survival rate for bomber and intruder pilots is abysmally low. A single mission can be the dividing line between life and a name scratched onto the squadron's memorial board. Yet here you are, 22 years old, awake in a world where the odds are stacked brutally against you. You roll from your bunk and tug on your flying boots. The leather feels like ice, stiff from nights spent in unheated quarters. Outside, the faint light of dawn seeps through the small windows, illuminating the endless English gray. Somewhere across the airfield, the muffled rumble of engines is already beginning. Other crews warming up for early training flights, or perhaps for operations that will take them across the channel into enemy skies. Breakfast is served in the mess hall, but calling it breakfast feels generous. The porridge is lumpy and tasteless, a mixture that clings to your spoon like paste. The tea is harsh and bitter, strong enough to strip paint, but still you drink it. Every calorie matters, every bit of warmth matters. Around you, the chatter is forced, the laughter thin. You glance at the faces of the men beside you. They try to project confidence, but you can see the same thought behind every pair of eyes. Who among us will still be here next month? Today, like every day, the focus is training. You have been assigned to fly one of the most remarkable aircraft of the war, the de Havilland Mosquito. Its very existence defies logic. Built almost entirely of wood, it is nicknamed the Wooden Wonder. To the untrained eye, it seems absurd to send men into combat in what looks like a glorified piece of carpentry. But those who have flown it speak with awe. Fast, agile, and versatile, the Mosquito can outrun nearly every German fighter. It carries no armor, no defensive guns facing backward. Your only protection is speed, skill, and the nerve to fly low and fast where others dare not. As you leave the mess hall, the day stretches before you in a rhythm that has already become familiar. Briefings, pre-flight checks, training runs, debriefings, and the brief interludes of camaraderie with the men who are rapidly becoming your second family. The air is damp and heavy with the smell of aviation fuel. Through the morning mist, you can make out the dark shapes of aircraft lined up on the field, engines coughing into life one after another. Somewhere beyond this island lies occupied Europe, a vast landscape of danger where every field might conceal a flak gun, every forest a German radar station, every cloud the possibility of a fighter waiting to pounce. But for now, the war is still at a distance. For now, you are alive, preparing, training, learning. And yet, even in this moment of relative safety, you cannot escape the truth. Combat flying is not about if you will face danger, but when. The instructors tell you plainly, your machine will keep you alive only as long as you respect its limits, and your survival depends as much on discipline and teamwork as on courage. Lying in your bunk last night, you thought about this, about what it means to climb into an aircraft made of plywood and canvas, held aloft by two powerful Merlin engines, and pointed toward enemy territory where thousands are determined to kill you. You thought about the thin line between bravery and fear, about how every mission will test not only your skill, but also your ability to live with the decisions you make under fire. This morning, as you watch the mist burn away over the airfield and hear the rising roar of engines, you feel it in your chest. The tension, the dread, but also the exhilaration. Because despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the statistics that tell you survival is unlikely, you know you are about to join one of the most extraordinary chapters in aviation history. The barracks fade behind you as you walk toward the waiting aircraft, boots crunching on wet gravel. This is your world now. A thin mattress, gray mornings, bad porridge, and the knowledge that you are training for missions where mistakes mean death. But you wouldn't trade it for anything else. You are a Mosquito pilot in 1943, and your war is only just beginning. The first time you walk across the mist-covered tarmac toward the Mosquito, it feels less like approaching a machine and more like approaching a living thing. The aircraft sits low and sleek on its landing gear, twin engines gleaming under the pale English sun, its wooden fuselage painted in camouflage greens and browns that seem to blend with the damp airfield around it. Your breath catches because up until now, the Mosquito has been a name whispered with reverence in the mess hall. Now it's real, waiting, almost daring you to climb inside. At first glance, it seems fragile. You know it's made mostly of wood, birch, spruce, and balsa sandwiched together with glue, coated with fabric, then lacquered to a shine. You can't help but think of carpenters' shops, not war factories. But appearances deceive. The men who built this airplane turned carpentry into alchemy. What they created is faster than almost every fighter in the German Luftwaffe. Wooden wings, wooden fuselage, and yet it can streak across enemy territory at over 400 miles per hour. The engineers proved that armor isn't always strength. Sometimes strength is the ability to outrun danger entirely. You stop a few feet away, taking in the numbers that mean little on paper but suddenly matter with every glance. 40 feet long, 54-foot wingspan, 14,000 pounds empty, 22,000 fully loaded. None of those statistics prepare you for the elegant menace of its shape. It looks less like an airplane and more like a predator, streamlined, purposeful, ready to strike. The ground crew is already fussing over it, wiping oil from the Merlin engines, checking the landing gear, securing panels. They treat it with a mixture of affection and seriousness, like a racehorse that might win or die in the next run. One of the mechanics pats the fuselage as if it's alive, then steps back so you and your navigator can climb aboard. Clambering up into the cockpit is not graceful. The Mosquito isn't built for comfort. You squeeze through a narrow hatch, boots scraping metal, shoulders brushing the frame. Inside, space is scarce. You and your navigator sit side by side, so close you can feel the heat of his body through your flight gear, close enough to smell his breakfast tea when he exhales. The cockpit smells of machine oil, leather, and the faint sharpness of glue that once held the wooden parts together. In front of you stretches the instrument panel. Dozens of dials, switches, and gauges, each with a purpose you've memorized until you can find them blindfolded. Fuel mixture levers, propeller pitch controls, oxygen gauges, altimeters, artificial horizons, all waiting for your hands. It's overwhelming at first, like staring at a foreign language written in numbers and needles. But soon it becomes second nature. Your instructor squeezes in behind you, somehow making the already cramped space even tighter. His voice is calm but carries authority. A man who has survived enough missions to know that fear can be tamed by routine. He runs you through the startup sequence. Your fingers tremble as they flick switches, adjust levers, press ignition buttons. Then it happens. The starboard Merlin coughs, sputters, then roars into life. The vibration floods through the wooden frame and into your bones. A second later, the port engine joins it, the sound merging into a deep, chest-thumping growl that seems to make the entire airfield shake. Your headset crackles with static, but all you hear is the power of two engines that together generate more than 3,000 horsepower. The Mosquito isn't just alive, it's awake. Taxiing is awkward at first. The thin wheels bounce over every bump, the aircraft swaying like a boat in rough seas. You work the rudder pedals carefully, keeping it straight while ground crew wave you forward. The canopy glass rattles slightly, the smell of aviation fuel heavy in the cockpit. Other Mosquitoes roll ahead and behind, each one piloted by a young man like you, all trying to look braver than they feel. At the runway threshold, your instructor nods. It's your moment. You push the throttles forward and the Merlin engines scream. The acceleration is brutal, pinning you back in your seat. The airfield blurs into streaks of gray and green. At 90 miles per hour, You ease back on the stick and suddenly the earth drops away. The Mosquito lifts off like a bird freed from its tether. There's no sluggishness, no hesitation. The controls respond instantly, the wooden wings flexing gently as the aircraft finds its rhythm in the sky. The vibration of the engines settles into a steady heartbeat. For the first time, you're not just watching the Mosquito, you're flying it. Your instructor keeps a close eye on you, but even he seems to relax. "Treat her well and she'll bring you home," he says through the intercom. You can hear the affection in his voice, the way combat veterans talk about machines that have saved their lives. You climb to altitude, the English countryside spreading below like a patchwork quilt of hedgerows, fields, and rivers. The view is breathtaking, but your mind is locked on the controls. The stick feels heavy at high speeds, the rudder force is demanding, but the response is like nothing you've flown before. Think about banking left, and the Mosquito is already halfway there. It's alive, sensitive, demanding, but exhilarating. In that moment, you forget the statistics, the grim warnings, the inevitability of loss. You forget the cold barracks, the tasteless porridge, the weight of war pressing down on every waking thought. All you feel is the joy of flight and the incredible realization that you are in command of one of the fastest, most remarkable aircraft ever built. You understand now why they call it the Wooden Wonder. It's not just a plane. It's a miracle, one that might keep you alive long enough to see another dawn. The cockpit of the Mosquito quickly becomes both your prison and your sanctuary. Every mission, every hour of training, every sortie begins and ends here, in this cramped, noisy, vibrating space where two men sit shoulder to shoulder, entrusted with a machine that could kill them as easily as save them. The first thing you learn is how little comfort matters in combat aviation. The seat beneath you is little more than a metal frame with a thin layer of padding. Within an hour of flying, it feels like sitting on stone. The shoulder straps of your harness cut deep into your chest every time you move. Your parachute pack digs into your back, an ever-present reminder that bailing out might be your only way home someday. You and your navigator occupy a space so tight that your elbows constantly brush. Every time you lean forward to adjust a switch, you bump against his charts or his knees. Privacy doesn't exist here. Your fates are bound together, your survival dependent on silent cooperation as much as spoken words. You can hear him breathe, smell the smoke on his uniform from the cigarette he had before takeoff, feel the subtle shift in his body when tension creeps in. Ahead of you, the instrument panel is a jungle of dials and gauges. At first, it overwhelms you. Oil pressure, fuel flow, cylinder head temperature, manifold pressure, artificial horizon, compass headings, airspeed indicator, altimeter. Each one must be checked, cross-checked, and remembered. You spend long nights in the briefing hut memorizing their positions until your hands can find them in pitch black. In combat, you won't have the luxury of looking twice. The startup ritual becomes second nature. Magneto switches on. Mixture levers rich. Propeller pitch set. Fuel pressure steady. A flick of the starter, a cough, and then the Merlin engines roar alive, vibrating through the wooden frame until the entire cockpit seems to shiver with contained violence. The sound is deafening even with your leather helmet clamped tight. You feel it in your chest more than in your ears, a steady, thrumming heartbeat that ties you to the machine. Taxiing to the runway is a test in itself. The Mosquito sways and bounces, its narrow landing gear making every pothole feel like a lurch. You fight the rudder pedals to keep her straight, compensating constantly. It feels ungainly on the ground, like a wild animal that resents being restrained. But once the throttles go forward, the transformation is immediate. The engines bellow, the acceleration slams you back in your seat, and the wooden airframe leaps forward as though eager to break free. In the air, the Mosquito is astonishing. The controls respond instantly, as if the aircraft anticipates your intentions before you act. But this sensitivity comes with danger. Too rough on the stick and she bucks like a spooked horse. Too steep in a turn and the wooden structure complains with ominous creaks. You learn quickly that she doesn't forgive clumsy hands. Precision, smoothness, and respect. These are the keys to mastering her. Formation flying adds another layer of complexity. Dozens of Mosquitoes can take off within minutes, forming patterns in the sky that require absolute discipline. You keep your wingtip just feet from another aircraft's, eyes straining against the slipstream, every muscle tense to maintain position. One mistake and you don't just risk your life, you risk the lives of the men flying beside you. Your navigator's role is equally vital. He spends hours hunched over charts and maps, plotting courses, calculating drift, measuring fuel consumption with mathematical precision. In the air, he calls out corrections calmly, 5 degrees left. Hold this heading for 2 minutes. Altitude steady. His voice in your headset is the anchor that keeps you steady when clouds roll in or landmarks vanish. Over time, you begin to anticipate each other's thoughts, an unspoken language forged in exhaustion and repetition. Night flying is another brutal teacher. There are no lights on the ground. Britain is under blackout. The countryside is invisible, a black void broken only by the occasional glimmer of moonlight on rivers or roads. Your cockpit instruments glow dimly, but outside the world is swallowed by darkness. You learn to fly by feel, trusting the dials, your hands moving by memory across the controls. It is terrifying at first, exhilarating later, and always dangerous. The Mosquito is fast, so fast that mistakes multiply in seconds. At 250 miles per hour, a moment's inattention can mean flying straight into a hillside. At 50 feet above the ground, there is no margin for error. You practice again and again, skimming treetops, diving into valleys, pulling up at the last possible second. Your instructors remind you constantly, the wooden wings are strong but not invincible. Treat the Mosquito as an extension of yourself, not a tool to be forced or she will kill you. The physical strain builds with every flight. The control stick is heavy at high speeds, demanding brute strength from your arms and shoulders. The noise is unrelenting. Even with earphones, the roar of the Merlins pounds at your skull, leaving your ears ringing long after landing. After 6 hours in the cockpit, your body feels beaten, your mind drained. And yet, the moment your boots hit the tarmac, you already crave the next flight. Gradually, you adapt. The harness that once cut into your shoulders becomes a second skin. The cramped cockpit becomes familiar. The endless checks and routines become rhythm. You stop fighting the Mosquito and start flying with her. It's a partnership, an understanding, almost a kind of trust. You realize something quietly one evening after landing from a long training sortie. As you shut down the engines and the vibrations fade, you rest your hand on the control stick. For the first time, you don't feel like an intruder in the cockpit. You feel like a pilot of the Mosquito, one of the few who will ride this wooden wonder into the teeth of the war. The British countryside becomes your classroom. From the moment you lift off, the world below turns into a map of rivers, hedgerows, villages, and railways, all potential guides and dangers at the same time. Training in the Mosquito is not just about handling the aircraft. It's about learning to fight the air, the terrain, and your own instincts. The first real challenge is low-level flying. Your instructors demand it. Stay low, stay fast, stay alive. At 50 feet above the ground, the Mosquito hurtles forward at 250 miles per hour. At that speed, obstacles appear out of nowhere. Power lines strung between farmhouses, church steeples rising unexpectedly, radio masts hidden in the mist. The margin for error is measured in seconds. Too slow to react and you won't just crash. You'll vanish in a fireball before you even understand what went wrong. Scotland becomes your testing ground. You roar through the highlands, valleys funneling you between jagged hills, the aircraft shuddering as winds whip through narrow passes. The landscape demands absolute concentration. Your eyes sweep constantly, altimeter, compass, horizon, terrain, back to the altimeter. Every breath feels shallow, your body tense with anticipation. At night, the training is even worse. The darkness swallows landmarks, forcing you to trust your instruments and your navigator's voice. Your navigator is your lifeline. While you focus on flying, he reads the world below like a coded book. He traces rivers, identifies railway lines, marks crossroads, calling out bearings in calm, clipped tones. Left 2 degrees. Maintain this heading for 3 minutes. Next landmark, stone viaduct at 10 o'clock. His words guide you like a tether through the void. Over time, you begin to sense each other's rhythm. You bank the Mosquito before he finishes the sentence. He notes your corrections without comment. The partnership grows until communication feels more like instinct than speech. The instructors drive you mercilessly. They've seen too many rookies make rookie mistakes. One evening, an older flight lieutenant stands before your group in the briefing hut, chalking crude diagrams on a blackboard. He points to a jagged line representing terrain. The aircraft will forgive many things, he says, his voice hard. But she won't forgive stupidity. Pull too hard and you'll snap the wings. Pull too late and you won't be around to regret it. He pauses, scanning the room. Remember this, the Mosquito will take you into hell and back, if you respect her. Respect becomes your creed. You learn to coax, not command. Push the engines too hard and the temperatures spike into the red, threatening seizure. Yank the stick too violently and the wood complains with unsettling creaks. Every flight teaches you where the line lies and how thin it really is. Navigation training is relentless. Radios are unreliable. Electronic aids are almost non-existent. You must learn to navigate the old way, dead reckoning. Distance, speed, time, landmarks. You draw lines on maps, calculate drift angles, adjust for wind, and hope your estimates hold true when the ground looks nothing like the paper in your lap. It's tedious, exhausting, but in combat it will mean the difference between finding your target and flying blind into enemy flak. Formation training adds a new dimension. Dozens of mosquitoes flying together in tight groups, each pilot trusting the others to hold their lines perfectly. From your seat, the aircraft beside you feels uncomfortably close, wingtips sometimes separated by only a few feet. One moment of distraction, one slip of the hand, and two crews are dead in a fiery collision. The discipline it demands is terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Weather is another teacher and a cruel one. Britain offers every form of misery: drizzle that blinds your windscreen, fog that swallows runways whole, winds that push you sideways on takeoff, ice that creeps across wings like a silent killer. You practice landings in crosswinds that yank the Mosquito off course. You practice climbs into clouds so thick you can't see your own wingtip. You learn to trust instruments more than your eyes because in fog your senses betray you. Your body begins to change. Calluses form on your hands from gripping the control stick. Your arms ache after long flights, muscles strained against heavy control forces. Your ears ring endlessly, assaulted by the Merlin Engine's roar. Sleep becomes fragmented, snatched between sorties and lectures. And yet, when the call comes for another training flight, you leap to your feet with a kind of hunger. Because every hour you fly, you feel yourself becoming more than just a trainee, you are becoming a Mosquito pilot. And with that realization comes pride. The men around you, the ones who survive training, share that same pride. You trade jokes in the mess hall, laugh at the absurdities, complain about the food, but beneath it all lies an unspoken bond. You know that someday soon, you'll be flying into places where that bond might be the only thing standing between survival and oblivion. The countryside that once seemed so peaceful, rolling hills, quiet villages, winding rivers, transforms into your proving ground. You carve the Mosquito across it again and again, mastering every nuance. And one evening, as the sun sets behind the Scottish mountains and the sky burns gold, you level out at 50 feet, throttles open, the wooden wings flexing with the wind. For a moment, despite the war, despite the fear, despite everything waiting across the channel, you feel invincible. The Mosquito is no longer just a machine. It is your partner. And soon it will carry you into combat. Flying low is not just a tactic. It is an art form, a razor's edge between brilliance and disaster. Instructors call it hedge hopping. You call it survival. The Mosquito was built for speed, and at 250 miles per hour, skimming 50 feet above the ground, you are nearly invisible to enemy radar. But at that altitude there is no room for error. Your training flights across the countryside drill this reality into you until it becomes instinct. You sweep along valleys, following rivers like silver ribbons, weaving between hillsides, ducking beneath cloud layers so low they brush the wingtips. Farmhouses, stone bridges, and clusters of trees flash by in seconds. You learn to scan constantly, horizon, terrain, instruments, back to terrain. One lapse of concentration, and the ground will rise faster than you can pull the stick. The Mosquito itself seems to relish this style of flying. Its wooden frame flexes with the turbulence, absorbing bumps instead of fighting them. The controls are responsive, almost eager, as if the aircraft itself understands the need for agility. When you bank sharply around a hillside, the wings groan, but they hold. When you dive beneath a ridge line, the engines scream with power, and the airframe answers with the grace of a predator in pursuit. Your instructors hammer home the limits. Too steep a turn, and the airframe complains with creaks that sound alarmingly like splintering wood. Pull back too hard and you risk ripping the wings from the fuselage. Ignore engine temperatures and the Merlins will punish you by climbing into the red, threatening seizure. Respect the machine, they repeat. Always respect her. Navigation at low altitude is a discipline of its own. At this height, there are no radio beacons, no electronic aids, just your eyes, your map, and your navigator's steady voice. He calls out landmarks barely visible at these speeds. Rail line at 2 o'clock. Crossroads in 30 seconds. Adjust 5 degrees left. You trust him implicitly. In return, he trusts you not to plow both of you into a hillside. The relationship becomes intimate, a bond stronger than words. In the cockpit, you don't just share space, you share fate. And the terrain itself becomes an ally. You learn to use it as cover, hiding beneath ridge lines to evade radar, letting valleys shield you from flak. Instructors demonstrate the art of masking, disappearing behind a hill, then reappearing seconds later at full throttle, too fast for enemy defenses to react. Every contour of the landscape becomes part of your arsenal, but the dangers are constant. Power lines are nearly invisible until they are upon you. Chimneys jet upward at impossible angles. Birds, harmless at ground level, become missiles in the sky. One strike against the canopy could blind you. One strike against the engines could end the mission before it begins. The Scottish Highlands, the Welsh valleys, the English countryside, all become proving grounds. You carve through them again and again until your hands no longer hesitate. Flying low transforms from terror into exhilaration, though the danger never disappears. Each time you land, drenched in sweat, you know you've cheated death once more. Night flying adds a new layer of difficulty. At 50 feet in darkness, you might as well be flying blind. Clouds swallow the moonlight and the ground below is nothing but shadow. You rely entirely on instruments and your navigator's voice. He calls headings like a lifeline, and you obey without hesitation. At those moments, trust is everything. Other pilots aren't so lucky. Occasionally, you hear the hollow announcement in the briefing hut. A crew failed to return. Sometimes it's mechanical failure. Sometimes it's weather. Sometimes simply a mistake. No one speaks of it at length. You just absorb the reality. Tomorrow it could be you. Yet despite the risks, there is a thrill in mastering this skill. Flying low feels alive in a way no other flight does. The countryside races beneath you, blurred and vivid all at once. The Mosquito vibrates with power, straining forward like a hunting animal. For a fleeting moment, you feel untouchable. Just you, your navigator, and a machine built from wood and genius, carving through the air at impossible speed. And that is the cruelest irony. Because even as you revel in the beauty of it, the rivers glinting in the sunlight, the forests rushing past, the freedom of flight, you know the next time you fly this way, it won't be practice. It will be over enemy territory, where the ground hides flak batteries and every village might be a death trap. Low-level flying is more than training. It is rehearsal for survival. And soon rehearsal will end. The Mosquito may be the machine that carries you into battle, but it's the men around you, the squadron, that carry you through the war. In the barracks, in the mess hall, on the tarmac, and in the briefing huts, you learn that survival isn't just about flying skill. It's about trust, friendship, and the quiet bonds forged under constant threat. Life in the squadron follows a rhythm that outsiders could never understand. Days begin before dawn, with boots hitting the cold floorboards and voices muttering half-awake curses. Breakfast is usually gray porridge, hard bread, and tea that tastes more like medicine than comfort. Yet somehow jokes start flying before spoons even hit the bowls. Laughter becomes a shield against fear. You laugh at the food, at the weather, at the officers, at yourselves. Because if you don't, the silence would be unbearable. The men you fly with are young, some barely out of school, others hardened by years of combat. Veterans of the Battle of Britain share stories that sound like legend, their voices quiet, their eyes older than their years. Newcomers like you hang on every word, equal parts awed and terrified. When a veteran says, "Don't yank the Mosquito in a dive, she'll tear herself apart," you listen. When he mutters, "Never trust the weather in Scotland," you know it's advice written in blood. Evenings in the mess hall are where camaraderie takes root. Cigarette smoke curls to the ceiling as men play cards, sip warm beer, or scribble letters home. Radios hum with the BBC news crackling through the static. You listen for victories, for updates from the front, for anything that might make the endless grind feel purposeful. Sometimes a piano appears, battered and out of tune, but when someone starts playing, the whole room sings. The voices are rough, off-key, but filled with something deeper than music. The need to forget, if only for a song. You quickly learn the unspoken rules of squadron life. You never ask a pilot about his mission until he chooses to talk. You never count the number of men at breakfast, because tomorrow there may be fewer. And you never let a comrade drink alone after a bad sortie. The bond with your navigator grows stronger with every flight. You live together, eat together, train together, and sit side by side in the cockpit where a single mistake could kill you both. You learn his habits, the way he taps his pencil when he's calculating, the muttered curses when charts slip off his knee, the way his breathing quickens when danger looms. He learns yours, the tightening of your grip on the control stick, the way you shift your shoulders before banking hard. Soon, words become optional. A glance, a gesture, a silence is enough to communicate. There are darker moments too. Occasionally, a bunk lies empty after a mission. Sometimes you hear the engines of aircraft returning at night, count the numbers, and realize one is missing. The mess hall falls quieter on those evenings, conversations trailing into silence as everyone avoids the empty chair. A pilot's kit is packed away without ceremony, his name added to the board. There are no speeches, no grand farewells. Just a quiet acknowledgement, and the war moves on. And yet, the camaraderie only deepens. Loss makes the survivors cling tighter to one another. You share cigarettes before flights, even if you don't smoke. You trade stories, some true, some wildly exaggerated, because storytelling keeps fear at bay. You invent nicknames, inside jokes, rituals, small defenses against the vast machinery of war. One night after a grueling training sortie, you sit outside the barracks with a few others, the damp cold seeping through your uniforms. Someone passes around a flask, the taste sharp and burning. The conversation drifts from football scores to the absurdity of wooden airplanes to dreams of life after the war. One man swears he'll open a bakery, another insists he'll never touch an aircraft again. You say nothing at first, just listening to the voices. Then you realize, this is your family now. Not by blood, but by circumstance, by choice, by necessity. The squadron becomes more than just men flying missions. It becomes a lifeline. When you climb into the cockpit, you're not flying for yourself. You're flying for the man in the next aircraft, for the navigator at your side, for the ground crew who worked through the night to patch bullet holes and fuel your engines. You fly because they depend on you and you depend on them. In the end, it's not medals or strategy that carry you through the war. It's the camaraderie of young men who laugh at danger, share stale cigarettes, and carry each other's burdens without needing to say a word. And as you look around the mess hall one evening at the tired faces lit by cigarette smoke and lamplight, you realize something profound. Even in the middle of war, even with death always just a mission away, you found a kind of brotherhood that no peace could ever create. The first mission briefing feels less like a meeting and more like a sentencing. You file into the dimly lit room with the rest of the squadron, boots scuffing the wooden floor, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of damp uniforms. Maps are already spread across the long wooden table at the front. Black and white reconnaissance photographs are pinned to the board, grainy images that show runways, hangars, and clusters of aircraft parked neatly on dispersal pads. The intelligence officer stands waiting, pointer in hand. His expression is professional, almost casual, as though he were discussing the weather rather than life and death. Behind him, a chalkboard lists times, altitudes, headings, data that looks simple until you realize each number represents a choice that could kill you. Gentlemen, he begins, tapping the pointer against the map. Tonight's target, a Luftwaffe airfield approximately 40 miles inland from the French coast. Reconnaissance indicates multiple squadrons of Messerschmitt 109 stationed here, with additional anti-aircraft defenses in place along the perimeter. Your objective is to disrupt operations by destroying aircraft on the ground and, if possible, damaging hangars and fuel storage. The words land heavy. You glance at the faces around you. Some stare with forced calm, others scribble notes. One man chews his pencil until it splinters. You feel your stomach twist. The officer continues, his tone brisk. He outlines the route across the English Channel, low-level, wave-top height, designed to avoid German radar. Then inland, hugging valleys and rivers until reaching the target. The timing is precise. Reach the airfield just before dawn, when enemy pilots are least alert. The good news, he says with a faint smile that convinces no one, is that the Mosquito is faster than anything they'll put in the air against you. The bad news is that if you're caught on the way in, or the way out, you'll be hundreds of miles from home with the entire German war machine between you and safety. You study the photographs with a growing sense of unreality. There they are, neat rows of German fighters, the same aircraft that have been shooting down your comrades over the channel. From this distance, they look harmless, like toys scattered on a table. But you know that if they ever get airborne behind you, Their cannons will turn your wooden aircraft into splinters in seconds. Questions come from the back of the room, about fuel estimates, alternative landing strips, emergency radio frequencies. The answers are delivered with clipped efficiency. Nothing is sugar-coated. Everyone in the room understands the odds. The squadron commander steps forward, his voice calm but carrying weight. Remember your training. Stay low, stay fast, and stay together. This is not about heroics. This is about precision. Hit your targets, keep moving, and bring your aircraft home. His eyes sweep the room, resting briefly on each man. Trust your navigators. Trust your machines. And trust each other. The briefing ends as suddenly as it began. Maps are rolled up, photographs gathered, chalk wiped from the board. Men rise slowly, murmuring to each other, some making jokes to cover the fear, others silent, lost in thought. You gather your gear, hands trembling slightly as you fold your chart. Outside, dusk has settled over the airfield. The light is fading, the temperature dropping. Ground crews swarm around the Mosquitoes, loading ammunition, checking engines, fueling tanks to the brim. The smell of high-octane fuel mixes with the damp earth, the air humming with tension. In the mess hall, you choke down another meal of stew and bread, though your stomach protests. You force yourself to eat because you know it might be the last warm food you get. Around you, the squadron buzzes with nervous energy. Laughter is louder than usual, conversations more forced. Men tell stories about their hometowns, about sweethearts waiting back home, about what they'll do when the war ends. Everyone knows it's superstition. The louder the talk, the heavier the silence inside. Back in the ready room, you pull on your flying gear. Thick, sheepskin-lined jackets, helmets, oxygen masks, gloves. Each piece of clothing feels like ritual armor, not because it will save you, but because it prepares your mind for what's ahead. The gear is heavy, awkward, and uncomfortably warm inside the hut. But once you're at altitude, you'll be grateful for every layer. Your navigator checks and rechecks his charts, drawing pencil lines with the precision of a surgeon. He mutters calculations under his breath, fuel loads, headings, estimated times of arrival. His calmness steadies you. Together, you've trained for this moment. Together, you'll either succeed or vanish into the French countryside. The call finally comes, pilots to your aircraft. The words cut through the chatter like a blade. Conversation stops. Chairs scrape back. Men rise, some slowly, some quickly, each lost in his own thoughts. As you walk out into the night, the airfield alive with engines and floodlights, you feel the enormity of it settle over you. Training is over. The first mission has begun. The channel at night is a black mirror, endless and menacing. You skim just above its surface, flying at 50 feet, so low that the waves blur beneath your cockpit like streaks of silver when the moon catches them. At this altitude, you are invisible to most German radar. But the price of invisibility is terror. One mistake, one gust of wind, one moment of inattention, and the Mosquito will meet the sea in an instant of fire and splintered wood. Your navigator's voice is steady in your headset. Hold this heading. 2 minutes until next waypoint. His tone is clipped, professional, the voice of a man who knows that precision is life. You grip the control stick tightly, feeling the vibration of the twin Merlin engines through your hands, the weight of the aircraft pressing against every nerve in your body. The darkness is overwhelming. England is already far behind, swallowed in blackout. Ahead lies France, where every coastline is bristling with searchlights, flak batteries, and patrols waiting to catch you. The only light you see is the pale glow of your cockpit instruments, dials and gauges shining dimly against the void. Outside, the world is reduced to shadows and the faint glimmer of the sea. At this speed and altitude, your senses betray you. The horizon disappears, and your eyes invent false images. Clouds that aren't there, shadows that look like cliffs rising out of the water. You trust your altimeter more than your instincts, knowing that instinct will tempt you to climb for safety. But climbing means detection, and detection means death. The Mosquito handles the low-level flight with eerie grace. The wooden frame flexes with the turbulence, smoothing the ride in ways that heavier aircraft could never manage. But the concentration required is brutal. Every second you adjust rudder, throttle, and ailerons, keeping the aircraft level, keeping the engines balanced, keeping death just an inch beneath your wings. Halfway across, the channel turns hostile. Clouds drift low, obscuring even the faint glow of moonlight. Your world shrinks to instruments and instinct. Your navigator calls out corrections, his voice calm even as static crackles through the intercom. Left 5 degrees. Maintain altitude. Next fix in 3 minutes. You obey instantly, the trust between you absolute. The roar of the engines becomes hypnotic, a constant hammering in your ears that makes you forget the outside world. Sweat gathers under your oxygen mask despite the cold. Your back aches from tension, your eyes burn from staring into darkness. Every muscle is coiled, waiting for the sudden shock of searchlights snapping on or flak exploding around you. Then suddenly, a voice in your headset, coastline ahead, 10 miles. Your heart hammers. France. Enemy territory. The faint line of land emerges against the night sky, barely visible but unmistakable. You dip even lower, skimming the waves until spray seems to leap toward your wings. This is the most dangerous moment, the crossing point where German spotters and radar crews are most alert. You cross the coast at wave-top height. The land rises abruptly, cliffs and dunes looming out of the night. Your altimeter jumps as you pull just high enough to clear the ground, the Mosquito's wooden frame groaning under the sudden strain. Your navigator calls out landmarks. A river, a rail line, a forest that swallows the horizon. Immediately, the sky feels hostile. Searchlights probe the darkness, stabbing white beams across the countryside. You duck beneath them, weaving through valleys, clinging to shadows. Somewhere in the distance, flak guns rumble, sending black bursts into the sky. Not at you, not yet, but close enough to remind you that they're waiting. The silence inside the cockpit is suffocating. No jokes, no chatter, no wasted words. Just breathing, the hum of engines, and the occasional call of a heading correction. At this altitude, every second feels stretched, every minute an eternity. Your eyes flick constantly between the dark ground rushing beneath you and the instruments glowing in the panel. You remind yourself why you're here. The photographs in the briefing room. The rows of enemy fighters. The mission is simple. Fly an unseen, hit them before they can react, and get out alive. But right now, the only truth is that you are deep in enemy skies, flying a wooden aircraft that could burn to ash with a single lucky burst of flak. Minutes stretch into hours. The channel lies behind you. France lies beneath you. Ahead is the target. You tighten your grip on the stick, steady your breathing, and whisper a silent thought. Let us get in, strike hard, and get home again. The first mission has truly begun. Crossing the French coast changes everything. The moment the land passes beneath your wings, you feel it, the weight of enemy territory pressing down like an invisible hand. England is behind you, safety a distant dream. Ahead, every village, every field, every stretch of forest may conceal a threat. Somewhere below, men with rifles and searchlights wait to catch you. Somewhere above, German night fighters may already be hunting. The darkness is thick, broken only by the faint shapes of rivers and roads when the moon slips free of clouds. At 50 feet, the world rushes past in a blur. Your navigator's voice is steady, a lifeline in the void. Left 2 degrees. Follow the river bend. Crossroads in 90 seconds. His confidence steadies your nerves. The two of you are bound together in absolute trust. His eyes on the map, yours on the horizon, both gambling with the same stakes. Dead reckoning is the only way forward. There are no electronic beacons, no reliable signals. Just time, speed, and geography. You learn to read the ground like a code. The dark line of a railway, the glint of a canal, the shadow of a village square. At this speed, landmarks flash into view and vanish in seconds. Miss one and you risk losing the entire route. Flak batteries dot the countryside, invisible until they open fire. You've been warned. German gunners are everywhere, from city outskirts to lonely farmhouses. A flicker of muzzle flash catches your eye, then the sky erupts. Orange bursts of anti-aircraft fire, black clouds blooming ahead. Your navigator shouts, "Dive left, dive left." You slam the stick forward, heart hammering as the Mosquito plunges, skimming so low you can almost see the fields rushing beneath you. Shells burst above where you should have been. Then come the searchlights. Beams of white stab into the sky, sweeping hungrily, converging when they sense movement. You weave desperately through valleys, hugging shadows, praying the lights don't catch you. One swings close, too close, and for a split second the cockpit flares with blinding light. You jerk the Mosquito into a brutal bank, stomach pressed sideways against the harness, until darkness swallows you again. Your navigator exhales sharply. Neither of you speaks. There is no room for fear. Fear slows reaction and hesitation kills. You force yourself into a rhythm. Scan instruments, scan horizon, scan terrain, back to instruments. The engines thunder relentlessly, the vibration steady as a heartbeat. As long as they roar, you're alive. If one coughs or falters, you know the odds of survival plummet. Villages drift beneath you, ghostly clusters of rooftops. Sometimes you see a light flick on, someone breaking blackout rules or perhaps signaling. You'll never know. Roads stretch through the countryside, some carrying the faint glimmer of German convoys, trucks moving under cover of darkness. Your orders are clear: do not engage. Tonight is not about glory. Tonight is about reaching the target. The air itself feels hostile. Every shadow could be danger. Every minute stretches into hours. The Mosquito is fast, but even speed feels slow when death could come from any direction. You remember the words of your instructor: the machine will save you if you respect it. Disrespect it and you won't get a second chance. You grip the stick tighter, every nerve alive with tension. Your navigator calls the next fix. Rail line coming up. Parallel it for 3 miles, then adjust heading 10 degrees north. Sure enough, the dark slash of tracks appears, gleaming faintly under moonlight. Relief floods you. Not safety, never safety, but confirmation that you are still on course. Suddenly, a voice crackles in your headset. Another crew reporting contact. The clipped message is barely audible over static, but the meaning is clear. German fighters are in the air. You scan the sky, heart pounding, searching for shadows against shadows. Nothing. Just darkness. You know they could be above, behind, anywhere. Your only defense is speed and silence. Minutes later, the target looms ahead. The airfield, blacked out, is barely visible until your eyes adjust. Long runways stretch like scars across the earth. Rows of dark shapes line the dispersal areas. Messerschmitt fighters, silent and vulnerable. You feel a surge of adrenaline. These are the same machines that have been terrorizing your comrades over the channel. Now they sit exposed, waiting for you. Your navigator leans closer, voice low and urgent. Target confirmed. Prepare for attack run. All at once, the training, the exhaustion, the fear, they converge into focus. The Mosquito is alive beneath your hands, engines screaming, wings flexing. The mission has reached its climax. It is time to strike. The moment of attack comes faster than you expect. 1 second, the airfield is a shadow on the horizon. The next, it fills your windscreen. Rows of enemy fighters, hangars, fuel trucks, and control towers spread out like pieces on a chessboard. Only here, every piece represents death, either theirs or yours. You push the throttles forward. The Merlin engines roar, the Mosquito surges ahead, and the airfield races toward you at 300 miles per hour. Adrenaline floods your veins, making your hands shake, but your grip on the stick is firm. This is what you've trained for. One brutal, decisive run that leaves no time for second chances. Your navigator calls out targets with rapid precision. Row of dispersals, 2 o'clock. Aim left hangar. Range 800 yards. Closing fast. His voice is urgent but calm, the anchor holding you steady. You align the nose of the Mosquito with the parked fighters, your finger tightening on the firing button. The moment you press it, the world explodes. The 420mm cannons beneath your wings unleash a torrent of fire. The recoil shakes the entire airframe, slowing you slightly as tracer rounds streak forward in bright orange lines. They smash into the nearest Messerschmitts, sparks leaping as metal tears apart. One bursts into flame instantly, a brilliant fireball that lights the night sky. Another crumples, its wings shearing off, fuel tanks igniting in a violent explosion. The airfield comes alive in chaos. Sirens wail, floodlights snap on, and German ground crews scatter in panic. Some fire rifles hopelessly into the air. Others dive for cover behind trucks and sandbags. You bank sharply, lining up on another cluster of aircraft. Your cannons hammer again, shredding wings, puncturing fuselages, turning deadly machines into wreckage before they ever leave the ground. Secondary explosions ripple across the airfield. A fuel truck erupts in a towering plume of fire. Ammunition stores detonate, each blast sending shockwaves that rattle your Mosquito. The target that looked still and silent just moments ago is now a storm of flame and smoke, a battlefield compressed into seconds. But with destruction comes danger. The Germans react fast. Flak guns open up from the perimeter, their shells bursting around you in orange flashes and black smoke. The shockwaves slap the Mosquito violently, fragments clattering against the wooden skin with sharp metallic pings. The smell of cordite and burning fuel fills the cockpit, carried in through the vents. Pull up! Pull up! Your navigator shouts as a row of hangars looms ahead. You yank the stick back, the Mosquito climbing sharply. The G-forces crush you into your seat, vision narrowing to a gray tunnel. For a heartbeat, you think the wings will snap. Then the aircraft clears the hangars, smoke and fire boiling beneath. The radio crackles with the voices of other crews, half shouts, half reports. Some confirm hits, others call for evasive maneuvers. One voice cuts out mid-sentence. You don't ask why. You roll into another attack run, lower this time, the ground so close you can see the individual blades of grass flashing by. The cannons spit fire again. A line of parked aircraft disintegrates under your rounds, pieces flying like leaves in a storm. German flares arc into the sky, bathing the airfield in harsh white light. For a split second, you see everything: burning planes, scrambling soldiers, searchlights converging on you. You dive into the darkness again, weaving erratically, trying to spoil the aim of the gunners below. Flak bursts so close you feel the Mosquito shudder as fragments tear past. One shell explodes just off your left wing, rocking the aircraft violently. Your navigator grips the sides of his seat, his voice clipped but steady. Engine temps holding. Fuel steady. Stay low. The final run comes almost without thought. You bank hard, line up on the control tower, and fire. The tracers march across the ground, striking the base of the structure. Windows shatter, walls erupt in flame, and the tower collapses in a shower of debris. The last thing you see before pulling away is the chaos you've left behind. An airfield engulfed in fire, enemy fighters burning where they stood, and German defenses still scrambling to catch shadows that are already gone. The attack has lasted less than 30 seconds. But in your memory it feels like hours. Every sound, every flash, every heartbeat is etched into you with painful clarity. Now comes the hardest part, escaping with your life. The attack is over, but survival is only half finished. If striking the target is a matter of precision, escaping is a matter of luck, nerves, and raw speed. As you climb away from the burning airfield, the sky erupts in violence. German flak batteries, now fully alert, unleash everything they have. The air shakes with the concussion of exploding shells. Bursts of orange and black flowers bloom around you, close enough to rattle your teeth. Each one feels like the hand of fate reaching out, and you don't know which one will finally catch you. The cockpit vibrates with unnatural force as fragments of shrapnel ping off the Mosquito's wooden skin. A sharp metallic clang rings out near your left wing. For a sickening second, you expect to feel the aircraft lurch into a death spiral. But the controls respond, still firm in your grip. Your navigator shouts above the noise, "Wing intact. Keep going." Relief is instant but fleeting. Searchlights stab upward, sweeping frantically across the sky. One finds you and the cockpit floods with blinding white glare. For a heartbeat, you are trapped in the beam, a target painted against the night. Instinct takes over. You yank the stick hard right, diving into a valley, the Mosquito groaning as it banks steeply. The beam follows, then loses you as you skim the treetops. Darkness closes around you once again, a cloak you pray will hold. But the Germans are relentless. The radio crackles with urgent voices. Other Mosquito crews calling evasive maneuvers, some shouting warnings, one voice suddenly breaking off mid-sentence. Your stomach knots. Another crew gone. No time to think. No time to mourn. Survival is the only task now. Your navigator calls out headings, his voice clipped and rapid. Northwest river bend in 1 mile. Drop altitude 40 feet. Flak tower ahead. You obey instantly, pushing the Mosquito lower, the engine screaming as the airframe trembles with the strain. Trees blur past so close you could almost reach out and touch them. The wooden wings flex, straining but holding, carrying you through the chaos. The noise inside the cockpit is overwhelming. The constant thunder of the Merlins, the dull thumps of distant explosions, the sharp crack of near misses, all blending into a storm that drowns out thought. You operate on training and instinct, reacting faster than you can process. Bank left. That. Climb. Roll. Anything to spoil the aim of the gunners below. Then, through the chaos, the worst sight of all, German fighters. 2 Messerschmitts drop from the clouds, silhouettes against the moonlight, closing fast. They know you're vulnerable, low and weaving, distracted by flak. Their cannons flicker, orange fire cutting the night. Tracers streak past your cockpit, some so close you can see their glow reflected in the canopy. You push the throttles to the stops. The Mosquito surges forward, her only weapon now raw speed. The Messerschmitts dive, closing the distance, but the Mosquito lives up to her name. Faster, sleeker, more agile at low altitude than anything the Germans can throw at you. You weave through valleys, forcing the enemy fighters to follow you into terrain where a single mistake means death. One overshoots, flashing past in a blur. The other breaks off, unwilling to risk the chase at this altitude. For now you are clear. But you're not safe. The flak continues, searchlights sweep, the night alive with chaos. Your navigator guides you by sheer willpower, calling corrections that seem impossibly precise. River junction ahead, left turn. Keep her steady, stay low. You obey without hesitation. Trust is everything. Minutes stretch into hours. Finally, the horizon ahead shifts. Dark land fades to darker sea. The French coastline lies behind you. The channel lies ahead. Relief washes over you, but you don't let go of the stick. Not yet. Not until England rises out of the darkness. You drop even lower, skimming the waves once more, the Mosquito's engines hammering as though urging you home. Behind you, the night sky over France is still alive with explosions, searchlights clawing at the heavens, German voices shouting into radios. But you are gone, swallowed by the dark expanse of water. Only when your navigator finally says, "We're clear." 10 minutes to landfall, do you dare to breathe deeply? Your hands tremble on the stick, your body heavy with exhaustion, but your mind sharp with the knowledge. You've survived your first combat escape. Not every man in your squadron will be able to say the same. The channel is behind you now, a black expanse fading into memory. Ahead, the faint outline of England emerges, cliffs, fields, and the dim glow of blackout towns hidden under layers of cloud. For the first time since the mission began, you allow yourself to feel something like relief. The air smells different here, cleaner somehow, even though it's the same damp night air you left hours ago. Your navigator exhales into the intercom, his voice calm but laced with exhaustion. Landfall confirmed. We're home. The words hang in the cockpit like a prayer answered. But you know better than to relax completely. The flight isn't over. More aircraft have been lost to accidents on return than to enemy fire, a grim statistic that lingers in the mind of every pilot. The airfield appears ahead, faint runway lights shielded by filters, glowing dimly through the mist. The control tower's voice crackles in your headset, giving landing instructions. Their tone is routine, professional, almost casual, as though you haven't just flown through flak and fighters and stared death in the face. You circle once, lining up with the runway. The Mosquito feels heavier now, her wooden frame groaning after hours of strain. The controls resist more than they did at takeoff, as if she too is tired. You ease back the throttles, flaps down, gear lowering with a mechanical whine. The runway rushes toward you, a strip of salvation surrounded by darkness. Touchdown is rougher than usual. The wheels slam onto the tarmac, bouncing once before settling. The Mosquito sways, her twin engines roaring as you brake, the smell of scorched rubber filling the cockpit. At last she rolls to a stop. Engines wind down, the vibrations fading until silence fills the cabin. Silence. For the first time all night, there is no roar, no flak, no radio chatter. Just your heartbeat and the faint hiss of cooling metal. You sit in the cockpit, hands still gripping the controls, unable to move. Only when your navigator nudges your shoulder do you realize you've been holding your breath. You exhale slowly, unbuckling the straps that have cut into your shoulders for hours. Climbing out, the cold night air bites hard against your sweat-soaked skin. The ground crew rushes forward, their flashlights darting over the aircraft, checking for damage. They run hands over bullet holes in the fuselage, patched fabric, scorched paint. One man whistles softly, shaking his head at a jagged tear near the left wing root. Lucky, he mutters. Lucky, that word again. Inside the briefing hut, the atmosphere is subdued. Maps are spread across the table, intelligence officers taking notes as pilots describe their runs. You give your report. Aircraft destroyed, hangars hit, control tower demolished. But the words feel distant, unreal. Numbers on a map don't capture the heat of burning planes, the shock of explosions, the terror of flak bursting so close it rattled your bones. Around the room, faces tell the true story. Some men stare blankly at their teacups, hands trembling. Others light cigarettes, puffing furiously to mask the adrenaline still coursing through them. A few chairs are empty, already noted quietly by everyone but never mentioned aloud. Tomorrow those bunks will be stripped bare, their possessions packed into boxes, their names crossed off the squadron roster. After the debrief, you find yourself in the mess hall, staring at a cup of lukewarm tea. The chatter around you is muted, voices low, laughter forced. The camaraderie is there, but beneath it lies the unspoken truth. Every mission completed only guarantees another one tomorrow. The cycle never ends. When you finally crawl back into your bunk, exhaustion crashes down like a wave. The thin mattress feels like luxury after hours of tension. Your body aches, arms heavy from gripping the stick, shoulders sore from the harness, ears ringing from the constant roar of the engines. Yet sleep doesn't come easily. Every time you close your eyes, you see tracer rounds, hear flak bursts, feel the sudden lurch of evasive dives. Still, eventually, fatigue wins. As you drift off, one thought echoes: you survived. Tonight, at least. Tomorrow may bring new orders, new targets, new dangers. But for now, you are alive. And in this war, survival is the only victory that truly matters. By late 1943, the missions begin to change. The endless night raids and low-level intruder flights have become a rhythm, but now new orders arrive. Missions that demand more precision, more daring, and expose you to new forms of danger. The Allies are shifting strategy. Bombing campaigns stretch deeper into occupied Europe. Resistance networks grow bolder, sending urgent requests for help. And the Mosquito squadrons, with their speed and agility, are at the center of it all. You notice it first in the briefing rooms. The tone changes. No longer are you simply tasked with harassing airfields or strafing supply depots. Now, intelligence officers slide photographs of targets across the table with hushed voices. Gestapo headquarters in a French city, railway yards carrying V weapons, even prisons holding captured resistance leaders. The words precision strike hang in the air, a polite way of saying suicide mission with no margin for error. Operation Jericho becomes the most infamous of these. The plan sounds impossible. Bomb the walls of a prison in Amiens to allow French resistance fighters to escape. Sitting in the briefing hut, you study the aerial photos, gray stone walls, towers, guard barracks. Your navigator whispers, "They want us to thread a needle with bombs." And he's not wrong. At high speed, in broad daylight, you'll have seconds to aim, seconds to drop, seconds to escape. The men in the squadron react in different ways. Some are grimly quiet, processing the weight of the mission. Others crack jokes, gallows humor that fills the silence. You keep your thoughts to yourself. Inside, there's pride that you've been chosen for something so important. But there's also dread. Because precision at 300 miles per hour means there's no room for luck. Your navigator prepares obsessively. He pores over maps, memorizing every bend in the Roman road that leads to the target. He sketches altitudes, approach vectors, even the timing of when you'll release your bombs. 11 seconds delay fuses, he mutters, just enough time to pull clear, if we're lucky. You nod, but the thought gnaws at you. If the calculations are even slightly wrong, you'll be caught in your own blast. The day of the mission arrives, and the squadron feels different. There's no easy banter over breakfast, no casual laughter. Men smoke in silence, adjusting their flying gear with ritualistic precision. You catch your navigator's eye, and he gives a small, tight smile. No words are needed. Takeoff is smooth, but the atmosphere is heavy. Flying in daylight feels naked after so many night missions. The countryside below is visible in stark detail. Villages, rivers, the white lines of roads stretching into the horizon. But beauty is a distraction. You know German observers are already tracking you, phones ringing in command centers, radar screens lighting up with your presence. Crossing the French coast in daylight is a shock. You see farmhouses, church spires, people in fields looking up as the roar of Merlin engines fills the sky. Some wave. Others dive for cover. A strange pang hits you. Are they hoping for liberation or dreading the bombs you carry? The formation tightens as the target approaches. 18 Mosquitoes flying in deadly precision, engines humming in unison. Then you see it, the prison, squat and gray, a fortress rising from the farmland. Smoke drifts from chimneys, and you can actually see tiny figures moving in the yard. For a split second you feel sick. There are allies down there waiting to be saved. There are also civilians who might die because of you. The lead aircraft dives, bombs dropping in perfect rhythm. 11 seconds later, the outer wall explodes in a plume of dust and debris. Your turn comes next. You drop into the attack run, throttle forward, aiming for the guard barracks. The prison grows in your windscreen with terrifying speed. At exactly the right moment, you release. 2 bombs tumble away. You pull hard, the Mosquito groaning under the G-forces. The explosions ripple through the target. Smoke, dust, screams. The barracks vanish in flame. For a moment, you glimpse chaos. Guards running, prisoners scattering, walls collapsing. Then you're gone, racing low over fields, weaving through bursts of flak as German guns roar to life. But even in success, the mission feels tainted. Through the smoke, you saw a building collapse that wasn't part of the plan. Later, you'll learn it was a school. French children died because your bombs went astray in the confusion. That knowledge will never leave you. Back in England, the mission is hailed as a triumph. Newspapers call it a daring rescue. Commanders shake hands. The escape of hundreds of resistance fighters is undeniable. But among the crews, celebration feels hollow. You raise a glass in the mess, but the taste is bitter. Victory and tragedy are tangled too tightly to separate. That night, lying in your bunk, you stare at the ceiling and realize the war has entered a new phase. The targets will only get more complex, the moral lines more blurred. The Mosquito gives you the speed to strike and survive, but it cannot shield you from the weight of choices made at 300 miles per hour. And in the silence before sleep, one question gnaws at you. What if next time the collateral is greater than the victory? The days after Amiens linger like a shadow. The newspapers celebrate a victory, RAF Mosquitoes smash prison, hundreds escape. But inside the squadron, the mood is far more complicated. You've saved lives, yes, but also taken them. For the first time, you feel the moral weight of flying a precision raid. The truth is ugly. Precision at 300 miles per hour in flak-filled skies is still guesswork. In the mess hall, conversations turn subdued. Men poke at their food, voices low, laughter forced. Your navigator sits across from you, cigarette smoke curling between you. They'll call it a success, he mutters, but tell that to the families who lost their children. His words hang in the air, heavy and unanswerable. At debriefs, intelligence officers demand numbers. How many aircraft destroyed, how many bombs struck the intended targets, how many casualties inflicted. But nobody asks about what you saw in those fleeting seconds above the prison. The chaos, the civilians, the screaming figures running from collapsing walls. Nobody asks how it feels to know your bombs may have killed the very people you were meant to protect. War, you realize, is not a story of clean victories. It is compromise. A balance between what is gained and what is lost, weighed on scales that never feel fair. And in these new raids, the balance grows more precarious. The missions keep coming. Gestapo headquarters in a French city. A command post in a Belgian town. A railway junction in a village crowded with civilians. Each time, the photographs are laid out in the briefing room, and each time the question gnaws at you. What if we're wrong? Your navigator prepares the same way he always does. Meticulous maps, precise headings, calculations down to the second. But you see the worry in his eyes now. He knows the margin for error is razor thin. A gust of wind, a mistimed release, a burst of flak forcing you to jink off course, and suddenly your bombs strike homes instead of barracks. One raid in particular haunts you. A Gestapo headquarters in the heart of a French town. You dive in low, release your bombs, and pull hard. The building disintegrates in smoke and fire. The mission is technically flawless. But as you climb away, you see the rooftops of houses caving in from the blast wave, fire spreading down narrow streets. Later, reports confirm civilian casualties. Nobody can agree on the number. Dozens, maybe more. Back at base, you stare into your tea until it grows cold, the same ritual every time. You write letters you'll never send, words that can't explain what you've done. Your family back home will never know. How could they? How do you tell someone you've destroyed an enemy headquarters and a family home in the same breath? The moral toll grows heavier with each mission. Some pilots shut it out completely, insisting, orders are orders. Our job is to fly, not to question. Others grow bitter, their eyes hard, their humor cruel. A few drink too much, trying to drown images that return each night in their dreams. You find yourself somewhere in between. You keep flying. You obey orders. But the questions stay with you long after the engines are silent. You lie awake in your bunk, the thin blanket pulled tight, listening to the wind outside the barracks. And you wonder, how many lives have I saved? How many have I destroyed? Does one outweigh the other? Or is it just arithmetic dressed up as strategy? What keeps you going in the end is the belief that the war must be won. That every raid, however costly, shortens the conflict, brings liberation closer, saves lives in the long run. It's what the commanders say, what the newspapers say, what you tell yourself because you have to. Without that belief, the weight of what you've done would crush you. And yet, when you close your eyes, the arithmetic vanishes. All that remains are faces. Faces of comrades lost, faces of civilians glimpsed for a split second before the bombs fell, faces of resistance fighters breaking free from shattered prison walls. You tell yourself you'll carry them all. That it's the price of survival, the burden of being a Mosquito pilot in a war where victory and tragedy are inseparable. But deep down you know the truth, the moral dilemmas don't fade. They stay with you as much a part of your war as the missions themselves. By 1944, the war is no longer just fought in the skies, it's fought inside your own body and mind. The Mosquito demands everything from you: strength, endurance, focus. Every mission drains something you're not sure you'll ever get back. Your hands develop calluses from gripping the stick so tightly. Your arms ache after long sorties, muscles burning from constant corrections against heavy control forces. 6 hours in the cockpit feels like running a marathon, every nerve stretched thin. The hard seat bruises your spine, the harness cuts into your shoulders, and when you finally climb out, your legs shake as if you've been carrying the aircraft on your back the entire time. Sleep is no escape. Nights are broken by the roar of engines in your dreams, by flashes of tracer fire that jolt you awake, heart hammering. You lie in your bunk staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled coughs and restless turning of other pilots who suffer the same. Some mutter in their sleep, calling out headings or shouting warnings, trapped in endless rehearsals of missions gone wrong. The ringing in your ears grows constant, a ghost of the Merlin engines that never quite fades. You ask people to repeat themselves, lean closer to catch their words. In the cockpit, it doesn't matter, you live by intercom and instinct. But in the mess hall, the silence between words grows heavier, as though conversation itself is slipping away. Your appetite changes too. Food, when you get it, tastes of fatigue more than flavor. The porridge is still gray and lumpy, the tea bitter and metallic, but you no longer complain. Eating is simply fuel, something to keep the machine of your body running. The real hunger you feel is for rest, for quiet, for a single day without the weight of survival statistics pressing down on you. Your navigator sees it in you just as you see it in him. The lines around his eyes deepen. His hands shake slightly when he lights a cigarette. But inside the cockpit, his voice never falters. He is your anchor and you are his. Together, you form a partnership forged in exhaustion and fear, held together by trust so complete it feels like instinct. The squadron shows its strain. Men grow gaunt, eyes sunken, movements slower between missions. Some cope by joking louder, drinking harder, masking fatigue with bravado. Others retreat into silence, conserving energy for when it matters. Everyone smokes more. The barracks reek of stale tobacco, a haze that clings to uniforms and blankets. Accidents increase, not from enemy fire, but from sheer exhaustion. A pilot misjudges a landing in poor weather and cartwheels off the runway. Another faints at the controls after a long sortie, his aircraft skidding to a halt in a field. The war takes lives not only through flak and fighters but through the simple fact that human bodies are not built for endless strain. You notice changes in yourself. Quick tempers, flashes of anger at trivial things, the wrong word, the wrong look. Then guilt as you realize it's not their fault. Your nerves are stretched so thin that even silence feels loud. When the engines finally shut down after a mission, the sudden quiet is unbearable. You long for noise even as you dread it. And yet, when the call comes for another briefing, you go. You strap in, run the checklists, push the throttles forward. Because not going means letting someone else fly in your place, and the unspoken rule of the squadron is simple. You don't wish death onto another man. So you fly and fly again, burning yourself down one mission at a time. The body can adapt. The mind is harder. Each mission adds another layer to the weight you carry. The comrades who didn't return, the civilians caught in the blast, the near misses that replay endlessly in your head. Sometimes you wonder if courage is just another word for endurance, how long you can keep going before something inside you finally breaks. One night, after a raid, you sit alone outside the barracks. The air is cold, the sky scattered with stars. You light a cigarette and watch the smoke curl upward, wondering how many men are doing the same across Europe on both sides of the war. Somewhere, a German pilot may be staring at the same sky, carrying the same exhaustion, haunted by the same ghosts. The thought is unsettling, almost humanizing. You crush it quickly. Tomorrow he may try to kill you. The toll is real, but you keep flying. Because in this war, survival isn't just about living through missions. It's about enduring the endless erosion of self, piece by piece, until the war ends or you do. By the summer of 1944, the war in the skies changes yet again. 4 months you've attacked German airfields, supply depots, and command posts. But now, a new weapon emerges, one that feels less like war and more like terror from the sky. The Germans call it the Vergeltungswaffe, the Vengeance Weapon 1. To Londoners, it becomes known simply as the buzz bomb. You first hear it before you see it, a harsh, pulsing roar unlike any aircraft engine. The sound grows louder, vibrating through the air with a staccato rhythm like a giant's mechanical heartbeat. Then you spot it, a small, stubby-winged craft, no cockpit, no pilot, just a flame spurting from its tail as it cuts across the sky. It flies straight, level, merciless. And when its engine cuts out, silence falls for a heartbeat, followed by an earth-shaking explosion as a ton of explosives slams into the ground. At first it feels unreal. An unmanned bomb flying itself across the channel? But the wreckage leaves no doubt. London streets are torn apart. Rows of houses collapse. Families who survived years of bombing raids now face a new nightmare, one that comes without warning. The briefing officers' faces are grim. These things fly at nearly 400 miles per hour. Our job is to intercept them before they reach London. Intercepting AV-1 is unlike any mission you've flown before. The Mosquito is fast, but to catch the buzz bomb, you have to push her to her absolute limits. Engines screaming at full throttle, controls heavy with the strain, you dive from above to gain the extra speed you need. The wooden frame creaks, every rivet and joint trembling, as if the aircraft itself is warning you not to go further. The first time you engage one, it feels like chasing a ghost. You dive steeply, the V1 growing in your windscreen, a small, darting target with a fiery tail. At 300 yards, you open fire. Tracers streak toward it, striking sparks from its metal skin. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, in a blinding flash, it detonates. The blast wave slams into your Mosquito, flipping you sideways, debris rattling against the fuselage. You wrestle the controls, heart hammering, vision blurred. Somehow the aircraft holds together. Later, you learn that many pilots develop a different method, tipping them over. You approach from the side, sliding your wingtip beneath the V1s, and with the gentlest nudge, upset its gyroscope. The bomb rolls, spirals, and crashes into an empty field. It's dangerous, terrifying even, but safer than flying through an explosion at point-blank range. You try it once, and the memory of those seconds, flying wing-to-wing with a bomb, is something you'll never forget. But no matter how many you destroy, some get through. Each time you land, exhausted and shaking from the strain of high-speed interception, you hear the BBC reports of fresh craters in London, fresh casualties. Families wiped out in the night. Children killed in their sleep. The pressure becomes unbearable. Shooting down an enemy fighter is one thing, it's combat, soldier against soldier. But failing to stop AV-1 means civilians die. The responsibility weighs heavier than any mission before. The squadron flies round-the-clock patrols, each sortie pushing man and machine to their limits. The Mosquitoes come back scorched, riddled with shrapnel holes, patched again and again by weary ground crews. Pilots stagger from their cockpits drenched in sweat, arms trembling, eyes bloodshot. Some collapse from exhaustion before they even reach their bunks. And still the V1s keep coming. Hundreds of them, a relentless storm of fire and steel. Londoners joke grimly about the doodlebugs, but beneath the humor lies terror. Every drone of a pulsejet engine could mean death. Every sudden silence could mean an explosion seconds away. For you, the sound becomes inescapable. Even in dreams, you hear it, that stuttering roar, that dreadful pause, the boom that follows. Sometimes you wake in your bunk with your heart pounding, convinced AV-1 has just struck outside. But it's only the wind rattling the windows, or another crew returning from patrol. The summer of 1944 becomes a blur of chases and explosions. You keep flying because there's no choice. Because every V-1 destroyed means lives saved. But deep down, you know this is a battle of attrition. Not just of machines, but of human endurance. And you wonder how much longer you, your navigator, and your Mosquito can keep going before something finally gives way. The skies over southern England are no longer quiet. Day and night, the pulse-jet roar of V1 flying bombs cuts through the air, each one a harbinger of destruction. Your squadron becomes a wall of defense, patrolling endlessly, waiting for the next streak of flame to appear against the horizon. These hunts are unlike anything you've flown before. Less combat, more desperate chase, a race between speed, skill, and time. Every interception begins the same way, a crackle in your headset, ground control's clipped voice. Bandit bearing 090, altitude 1000, speed high. Immediately your body tenses. You shove the throttles forward, the Mosquito surging as her engines howl. The airframe shudders, wings flexing under the strain, and you dive to pick up speed. Spotting the V1 is never easy. It's small, fast, and flies low, hugging the terrain. But once you see it, the fiery tail, the stubby wings, the insect-like silhouette, you can't mistake it. Adrenaline floods your veins. It's not a dogfight. It won't evade, it won't fight back. But somehow it feels even more terrifying. Because it doesn't care. It doesn't need to. If it reaches London, people die. Closing the distance is agony. The V1 moves at nearly 400 miles per hour, and even with the Mosquito at full throttle, you creep up inch by inch. The vibration in the cockpit grows harsher, every rivet screaming as if the aircraft itself is warning you that you're pushing too hard. Sweat trickles down your back despite the cold, your hands slick on the stick. At 500 yards, you can feel the blast waiting. One mistake, 1 second too close, and you'll vanish in the same fireball meant for London. You line up your gun sight, your navigator calling range. 400, 300, steady, steady, now. You fire. Tracers streak forward, slamming into the V1's fuselage. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, detonation. The explosion is blinding. The shockwave hammers the Mosquito, throwing you sideways like a toy in a storm. Debris rattles against the fuselage, sharp fragments thudding into the wooden skin. For a moment, you fight to keep control, vision tunneling as G-forces drag you down. Then the horizon steadies. The Mosquito lives. And London is safe, for now. But victory feels hollow. Because you know, even as the flaming wreckage falls into an empty field, another V1 has already been launched across the channel. The Germans fire them in waves, relentless, mechanical. No matter how many you destroy, some slip through. You hear the explosions on the radio, see the smoke rising in the distance when you land. Success and failure are measured in civilian craters. Some crews experiment with the wingtip technique, sliding alongside the V1 and nudging its wing to upset the gyroscope. It's cleaner, less deadly, but far more dangerous to attempt. You try it once, inching closer until the flying bomb looms beside you, flames sputtering from its tail. Your left wing hovers just inches below its stubby fin. Your breath catches, muscles trembling as you ease upward. The V1 wobbles, tips over, then spirals into the ground. Relief washes over you, followed instantly by horror. Because for those few seconds, you flew wing to wing with a bomb. Patrols stretch for hours, 8 at a time, pushing man and machine to breaking point. The monotony is broken only by bursts of terror when radar vectors you onto a target. Between interceptions, you sit in the cockpit, muscles cramped, scanning the horizon until your eyes blur. Your navigator keeps charts, marking each success with quiet precision. By September, you've destroyed dozens. But every mark on his map is also a reminder of the ones that slipped past. The pressure grinds men down. Pilots who once laughed after missions now stare blankly into mugs of tea, hands trembling. The constant roar of pulse jets becomes a phantom sound, echoing in your ears even on the ground. At night, you dream of them, buzzing overhead, the sudden silence, the explosion. You wake in sweat, heart pounding, ears straining for a sound that isn't there. Yet still you fly. Because every V1 you intercept is lives saved. Every flaming wreck in a field means a family sleeps another night. That thought becomes your anchor, your justification. Not glory, not victory. Just survival measured one interception at a time. The hunts continue into autumn. Weather turns foul, clouds low, rain slashing against your canopy. Interceptions become harder, more dangerous. But the orders never stop. Because London still burns, and only the Mosquitoes, Tempests, and Spitfires stand between the city and destruction. You push the Mosquito harder than she was ever designed to go. And each time she holds together, each time she brings you home. But deep inside you wonder, how long can she, and you, endure this endless chase? By late autumn 1944, the V1 campaign has ground you down to the bone. The missions blur together. Takeoff, climb, patrol, intercept, land. Repeat. Day after day, night after night. It feels less like flying and more like being a cog in a vast, grinding machine. A machine that chews up men and aircraft alike. The patrols stretch for hours, sometimes 8 at a time. You and your navigator sit in silence for long stretches, scanning the skies with burning eyes, waiting for the radar call. The drone of the Merlin engine seeps into your bones, steady and endless, until you can't tell whether you're awake or dreaming. Fatigue becomes a constant companion, wrapping around your thoughts like fog. Then the call comes. Bandit bearing 120, low altitude, speed high. Instantly the fog burns away. Adrenaline slams into your veins, every muscle tightening as you shove the throttles forward. The Mosquito surges, wings trembling, wooden frame creaking under the strain. You spot the fiery streak of the V1 ahead, and the chase begins again. Sometimes you catch it, sometimes you don't. And every failure gnaws at you. You know that if it slips past, if it reaches London, people will die. You picture the streets you once walked, the houses where families huddle in fear, waiting for the next explosion. That weight is heavier than flak, heavier than fighters. It presses down on you until your shoulders ache even when you're not flying. The toll shows in your squadron. Men who once bantered over tea now sit in silence, staring into their cups. Cigarettes burn down to ash between trembling fingers. Some talk in clipped, harsh voices, as if speaking loudly could hold back exhaustion. Others retreat inward, speaking only when duty demands it. Everyone is thinner, paler, older than they should be. Accidents creep in. One pilot misjudges his speed on final approach and slams into the runway. Another loses control during a chase and disappears into the channel, the sea swallowing both man and machine in seconds. These aren't caused by enemy action. They're caused by fatigue. By the endless demand for perfection in a world where mistakes mean death. You feel it in yourself. Your hands sometimes shake when you reach for the throttle. Your eyes blur during long stretches of scanning, forcing you to blink hard to focus. When you finally collapse into your bunk, sleep comes in jagged fragments, broken by dreams of flame and silence. The PulseJet's drone follows you everywhere, in the mess hall, in the barracks, even in quiet fields where you go to clear your head. The Mosquito bears the strain as much as you do. Every aircraft in the squadron carries scars. Patched holes, scorched paint, panels replaced after near misses. Mechanics work around the clock, welding, sanding, bolting, doing whatever it takes to keep the wooden wonders in the air. They joke about them being held together by spit and prayer, but you know it's not far from the truth. Despite the toll, you keep flying. Because there's no choice. You tell yourself that every V1 destroyed is worth it. That every flame falling into an empty field is a family saved in London. It's what keeps you strapping in, what keeps you pushing throttles forward when every nerve in your body screams for rest. But the breaking point looms closer with each mission. You see it in your comrades. One bursts into tears in the middle of a briefing, unable to stop. Another simply refuses to fly, his nerves shattered beyond repair. You wonder when it will be your turn. When the weight will finally crush you. And yet, every time you take the Mosquito into the sky, something inside you steadies. The engines roar, the horizon opens, and for a moment you remember why you fly. Not just for survival, not just for duty, but for the strange, terrible beauty of it. The sun rising over the channel. The thrill of catching a V1 at the last possible moment. The fleeting sense that your skill, your speed, your courage might actually matter. Exhaustion is real. The breaking point is real. But so is the determination to hold on, one mission at a time until the storm finally ends. By early 1945, the war feels different. The relentless V1 campaign that haunted the skies over England is fading. Allied armies have crossed France and Belgium, pushing the Germans back toward their own borders. Many of the launch sites that once sent flying bombs screaming toward London are now piles of rubble, overrun by ground troops. For the first time in years, you sense the tide turning. But the change brings no comfort. It simply replaces one danger with another. The missions no longer focus on interception over home skies but on striking deep into Germany itself. The Mosquito squadrons are reassigned to attack rail yards, bridges, and supply convoys, targets meant to choke the last breath from the German war machine. The landscapes you fly over tell their own story. French villages show signs of recovery, people returning to streets once abandoned. Belgium, too, feels different. Liberated towns where children wave as your aircraft pass overhead. But as you cross into Germany, the destruction is staggering. Cities lie in ruins, roads choked with refugees, smoke rising from factories bombed into silence. It is the face of a collapsing empire, but also a battlefield more dangerous than ever. The Germans fight like cornered animals. Flak batteries sprout everywhere, along rivers, around bridges, hidden in forests. Their accuracy sharpens. Perhaps they know they are losing, but they intend to take as many of you with them as possible. Every mission into Germany feels like flying through a storm of steel. Black puffs of smoke erupt around your Mosquito, shaking the wooden frame. You weave, dive, climb, always moving, always praying the next burst isn't the one that finds you. Fighter opposition dwindles, but it never disappears. When the Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs appear, they are often flown by young, inexperienced pilots, boys really thrown into cockpits with minimal training. But desperation makes them reckless. Some dive headlong at your formation, firing wildly, forcing you into violent evasive maneuvers. Others simply try to ram, turning themselves into human missiles. The chaos is terrifying, but the Mosquito's speed still gives you an edge. You rely on it now more than ever. In the briefing rooms, the maps spread wider each week. Targets move deeper into the heart of Germany: Munich, Hamburg, Berlin. You see the weariness in the eyes of the intelligence officers, hear it in their voices. The war is nearly won, they say, but not yet. There is always another mission, another target, another list of risks to calculate against the fading promise of victory. Among the squadron, hope flickers but never burns steady. Men talk of home more often now. Wives they haven't seen in years, children they've only known through letters, farms and towns waiting for their return. The word peace appears more frequently, whispered like something fragile that might shatter if spoken too loudly. Yet each morning, you all still strap in, knowing peace is not here yet, and death still stalks the skies. The Mosquito bears the scars of this final push. Each sortie adds new patches, new dents, new quirks in the engines. The ground crews labor endlessly, improvising repairs with whatever parts they can scavenge. Your aircraft is no longer sleek and pristine. She is a veteran like you, worn but unbroken. When you run your hands over her wooden skin before takeoff, you feel the bond between pilot and machine, forged in fire and survival. One mission stands out: a railway yard near the Ruhr Valley, vital to German supply lines. You approach at dawn, clouds glowing red in the rising sun. The flak is heavier than anything you've ever faced, the sky filled with bursting shells. The noise is deafening, the shockwaves brutal. Yet you dive, line up your bomb site, and release. The yard erupts in flames, train cars exploding in a chain reaction that lights the valley like hell itself. You climb away, battered but alive, knowing you've struck a blow that pushes Germany closer to collapse. Back at base, the celebration is muted as always. The statistics matter less now. What matters is that you are alive, that your comrades returned, that the war feels like it is staggering toward its end. But the toll is written on every face, etched into every tired gesture. The war may be ending, but for those who have lived inside it, the scars will not fade so easily. As winter turns to spring, a strange silence settles over the airfields. There are still missions, still dangers, but the urgency is different. It feels like waiting for a storm to pass, the final gusts before calm. You can sense it, the war is breaking. Germany is falling. And soon, perhaps, you will be free to fly without fear. But until that day comes, you keep flying. Because that is what you do. That is what the Mosquito was built for. And that is what the war still demands. The last months of the war carry a strange duality. The end is in sight, everyone knows it. The newspapers speak of collapsing German lines, of cities falling one after another. Yet the missions keep coming. For you and your Mosquito, the war is not finished until the final target is struck, the final sortie flown, the final bomb dropped. The atmosphere in the squadron shifts. There is less of the grim inevitability that marked 1943, less of the desperate pressure of the V1 summer. Instead, there's a sense of anticlimax, of fighting on when the outcome feels already decided. Still, complacency is fatal. Everyone knows men who died on routine missions days before the armistice. You remind yourself of this before every briefing, forcing your mind into focus. The targets move deeper into Germany. Airfields near Munich. bridges over the Rhine. Munitions factories still churning out weapons for a war already lost. The landscapes below are scarred beyond recognition. Cities reduced to rubble. Roads clogged with refugees dragging carts of possessions, fleeing in every direction. Rivers glint beneath bridges twisted into blackened skeletons. From 10,000 feet, you see the full devastation of total war, and it leaves you with a hollow feeling. Your final combat missions blur into one another. The pattern is always the same. Take off into gray skies, climb through layers of cloud, cross into hostile territory. Flak still greets you heavy and accurate. The Germans may be beaten, but they haven't given up. Shells burst around you with ferocious intensity, black smoke blossoming like poisonous flowers in the sky. Each time you dive toward the target, you wonder, will this be the one that finds you? On one raid, the flak is so thick it feels like flying into a wall. The Mosquito shudders violently as fragments rake across her fuselage. Your navigator shouts headings over the roar of the engines, his voice calm but strained. You press on, line up the bomb site, and release. The factory below disappears in a fireball. Climbing away, you steal a glance at the gauges, half expecting to see failing oil pressure or a sputtering engine. But somehow she keeps flying. The Mosquito always brings you home. Enemy fighters still appear, though rarely. Once, over southern Germany, a pair of Me-262 jets flashed past. Sleek, silver, impossibly fast. For a heartbeat, you feel utterly helpless. But they don't linger. Short on fuel, short on ammunition, short on everything, the German pilots vanish back into the clouds. They are a glimpse of another war, a future of speed and technology, but for now they are ghosts, arriving too late to change the outcome. Between missions, the base feels suspended in time. You and your comrades sit in the mess hall, sipping weak tea, smoking endless cigarettes. Conversation circles around the same topics. Rumors of surrender, the latest broadcast from the BBC, guesses about when it will all end. Some pilots make plans for after the war, jobs, marriages, university. Others avoid the subject altogether, unwilling to imagine a life beyond the cockpit. Your navigator remains your constant. After so many missions together, words are often unnecessary. A glance, a gesture, a clipped phrase is enough to coordinate everything in the air. You trust him with your life and he trusts you with his. It is a bond forged in fire, one that cannot be explained to anyone who wasn't there. Then comes the mission that feels like the end, though no one calls it that. A small airfield near Munich, suspected of housing a handful of operational aircraft. You approach through scattered clouds, the countryside below deceptively peaceful. No flak rises to meet you. No fighters appear. The runways are empty, the hangars silent. You circle once, then turn for home without dropping a single bomb. It feels anticlimactic, almost absurd. After years of danger, of fire and smoke and loss, the last mission is simply nothing. And maybe that's how wars end, not with grand finales, but with silence, with empty skies and abandoned airfields. On the flight home, you realize your hands aren't shaking for the first time in years. The tension that has lived inside you since 1942 begins, slowly, to loosen. The engines hum steadily, the horizon stretches wide, and flying feels, for once, like flying again. You don't know yet that it was your last combat mission, but deep down you feel it. The war is ending. The Mosquito has carried you through to the finish. And now, you wonder what life will be when the guns finally fall silent. May 8, 1945. The announcement comes not with fanfare, not with trumpets, but with the scratchy voice of a radio in the squadron dispersal hut. The German High Command has signed an unconditional surrender. Hostilities will cease as of midnight tonight. For a moment there is silence. Men look at each other, cigarettes burning down between their fingers, tea cooling in their mugs. Then, slowly, the reality begins to sink in. Someone laughs, an odd, hollow sound closer to relief than joy. Someone else swears softly, as if the weight of years has just been lifted off his shoulders. V-Day. Victory in Europe. The words hang in the air like something fragile and unbelievable. For so long, the war has been everything, every waking thought, every action, every mission. Now, suddenly, it is over. That evening, the mess hall fills with pilots and ground crew. The celebration is muted compared to what the newspapers will later describe. There are no wild parties, no raucous songs, only the clinking of glasses and the quiet toasts of men who have lost too many friends to feel unrestrained joy. To absent friends, someone says, raising a chipped mug of warm beer. The phrase echoes around the room. You join in the toast, the faces of those who didn't make it home flashing across your mind. Picard and his navigator, the fresh-faced boys who lasted only weeks, the veterans who carried you through the worst nights and then vanished into the black smoke of combat. Their chairs are empty, but they are present in every thought, every word. Outside, villagers gather in the streets to cheer, to wave flags, to dance with strangers. The sound of bells carries across the countryside, ringing for the first time in years. In London, you hear later, crowds fill Trafalgar Square, singing, shouting, embracing the sheer miracle of survival. But here at your squadron, the mood is quieter, tempered by loss. Later that night, you lie in your bunk, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in 3 years, you know you will not be woken for a dawn briefing, will not climb into a cockpit to fly across the channel. Yet sleep does not come easily. The war may be finished, but your mind is still tuned to its rhythms. You still expect the crackle of the radio, the rumble of engines, the call to scramble. You think of the Mosquito. Tomorrow she will still be there on the tarmac, engines ready, guns loaded. But she will not fly into combat again. The thought is oddly bittersweet. You owe your life to that wooden wonder, to her speed and her resilience, to the way she bent but never broke under the strain of war. She was your shield and your sword, your companion through the darkest days. And now, like you, she faces an uncertain future. The officers speak of demobilization, of storage and scrapping, of transition to civilian life. Feels unreal. How does one return to normal after years of flying missions where each decision meant life or death? How do you go back to a world where time is measured not in minutes to target, but in hours and days? The next morning you wake early out of habit. The barracks is quiet except for the snoring of exhausted men. You step outside into the cool air. The field is strangely still, no crews bustling, no aircraft warming up, no tension of impending operations. Instead, a soft mist clings to the grass, and for once the sky looks peaceful, untouched. Walking to the dispersal hut, you pass the Mosquito. Her paint is weathered, her fuselage patched in a dozen places, but to you she looks perfect. You run your hand along the wooden skin, feeling the cool dampness of morning dew. She has carried you across skies filled with fire, across seas lit by searchlights, through flak and fighters and flying bombs. She has brought you home when everything seemed lost. You whisper a quiet thank you as if she might hear. In the days that follow, the base begins to empty. Pilots receive orders, ground crews are reassigned, aircraft are ferried away. The sense of family that sustained you through the war begins to dissolve, each man stepping back into civilian life, carrying memories that cannot easily be shared. Promises are made, to write, to visit, to stay in touch, but you know most will fade with time. Still, in this moment, you allow yourself to feel something you have not permitted in years. Hope. The war is over. The world is broken, but it can be rebuilt. And you, who have lived too long with death, might finally have the chance to live. That night, when you close your eyes, the roar of engines and the crack of flak are replaced by the sound of bells still echoing in your memory. For the first time in a long time, sleep comes without nightmares. The war ends with a radio announcement, but demobilization begins with paperwork. The Royal Air Force does not simply allow its men to drift away into civilian life. There are forms to be filled, interviews to be conducted, medical examinations to be passed. After years of chaos, the bureaucracy of peace feels strangely overwhelming. You are summoned to the orderly room where clerks in neatly pressed uniforms hand out documents stamped with red ink. They ask questions that feel almost absurd after everything you've survived. Do you intend to remain in the service? What are your civilian skills? Where would you like to be posted during transition? You want to laugh. Civilian skills? You can navigate by dead reckoning across hundreds of miles of hostile territory, but you struggle to remember what day of the week it is. You can make life or death decisions in seconds under fire, but you hesitate when asked to choose a future occupation. The truth is you don't know. War has defined you for so long that the idea of anything else feels like a story written for someone else. The medical examination is thorough. Years of combat flying have left their marks. Your hearing is dulled by the relentless roar of Merlin engines. The doctor frowns when you admit that loud noises sometimes make you flinch, that your hands tremble when you're very tired. Still, he signs the forms. You are cleared to return to civilian life, though both of you know that the invisible scars are deeper than the visible ones. One of the hardest moments comes when you're ordered to ferry your Mosquito to a storage depot. She has been your constant companion through years of war, a living extension of yourself, as familiar as your own body. Climbing into the cockpit for what you know may be the last time, you run your hands across the controls with something close to reverence. The gauges, the switches, the worn leather seat, all of it feels like home. The short flight to the depot is uneventful, but each minute feels like goodbye. When you land, ground crew you don't recognize take the aircraft away as if she were just another serial number. You linger, watching as they tow her into a long line of war-weary machines, their camouflage paint schemes fading, their wooden skins scarred by flak and weather. Some will be scrapped, others perhaps converted to civilian use, but you know you'll never fly her again. The finality hits harder than you expect. Back at base, men drift away one by one. Some return to farms or factories, others accept jobs with airlines or engineering firms. Promises to write are exchanged, but everyone understands that civilian life will scatter you across the country, perhaps the world. The intense camaraderie of squadron life, the shared danger, the black humor, the unspoken trust, is dissolving, replaced by the uncertain independence of peace. You are given a travel warrant and a demobilization uniform, plain, brown, and ill-fitting. It feels strange to wear clothing without wings on the chest, without the insignia of rank. On the train ride home, you sit among other veterans in the same drab suits. Some talk loudly about their plans. Others sit in silence, staring out the window at the countryside rolling past, lost in memories they cannot put into words. When you arrive in your hometown, everything looks both familiar and alien. Shops are open, children play in the streets, women hang laundry in gardens. Life has gone on without you. People smile and shake your hand, calling you a hero, but their words bounce off the armor you've built inside. They cannot know what it was like. They cannot understand the sound of flak bursting around your aircraft, the smell of burning fuel, the sight of a friend's plane spiraling into the ground. At night, sleep is elusive. You wake at the slightest sound, heart pounding, half expecting the call to scramble. The habits of survival don't fade easily. Even in peace, you find yourself scanning the sky when you hear an aircraft engine, calculating speed, direction, altitude. Ordinary noises, cars backfiring, fireworks, make your body tense before your mind reminds you that the war is over. Finding work proves harder than you imagined. Employers are polite, respectful even, but most don't know what to do with a man whose resume consists of combat missions. What does pilot, de Havilland Mosquito, mean to a factory manager or a shop owner? Eventually you secure a job with a small airline, flying converted military transports. The work is routine, scheduled routes, predictable cargo, no one shooting at you. At first, the safety is almost disorienting. But gradually, the rhythm of civilian flying brings a new kind of peace. Still, you miss the Mosquito. Civilian aircraft are stable and comfortable, but they feel sluggish compared to the wooden wonder that once responded like an extension of your own body. Nothing in peacetime will ever match the raw intensity of those years. You begin to realize that the real challenge is not survival in combat, but survival in peace. Learning to live without constant danger, without the camaraderie of men who shared it, without the urgency that gave every day meaning. You are alive. The war is over. And now you must find a way to become something more than a survivor. The war may have ended, but it does not leave you. It lingers in the corners of your mind, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the way you scan the sky whenever an aircraft passes overhead. You thought peace would mean relief, but what you discover instead is that memory can be its own battlefield. At night, sleep is no longer a refuge. The dreams come uninvited, vivid as the missions themselves. You jolt awake with the sound of engines in your ears, the taste of cordite in your mouth, the smell of burning fuel thick in the air. Sometimes you're back in the cockpit, diving toward a German airfield while flak bursts around you. Other times you're standing on the runway, watching helplessly as a friend's Mosquito fails to return. Your wife shakes you gently, whispering that you were shouting in your sleep. But you don't tell her what you saw. You don't want to give the nightmares more weight than they already carry. Daylight isn't always better. The simplest sounds, a car backfiring, fireworks in the distance, trigger the old instincts. Your body tenses, your heart races, your hands clench as though gripping a control stick. Rationally, you know you're safe, but your body doesn't trust peace yet. Years of conditioning don't vanish in a few months. Civilian life requires skills you no longer have. In combat, every decision was urgent, guided by training, instinct, and necessity. Now, in peacetime, you find yourself paralyzed by choices that seem trivial to others. What job to take? What tie to wear? What furniture to buy for the house? People expect you to be decisive, confident, a war hero. But the truth is, you feel like a stranger in your own skin. Work with the airline helps, but even that feels hollow. Flying cargo between cities lacks the intensity, the camaraderie, the sharp edge of survival. The engines hum predictably, the routes are routine, the landings uneventful. Other pilots talk about efficiency, about fuel consumption, about customer service. You nod, but part of you is still back in the cockpit of a Mosquito, pushing throttles to the limit, navigating by moonlight, every second alive with purpose. Your friends from the squadron scatter. Letters arrive at first, full of news about new jobs, marriages, plans. But over time, the correspondence fades. Everyone is busy rebuilding their lives. And though you miss them, you know that what bound you together was the war itself. Without that crucible, the connections loosen. At reunions years later, you recognize the same haunted look in their eyes. They understand without words, but the meetings are infrequent, and then fewer still as the years pass. Your family does not fully understand either. How could they? To them, the war was rationing, blackouts, news broadcasts, and telegrams. To you, it was the cold metal of the control stick, the sharp crack of anti-aircraft shells, the silence in the barracks when a crew didn't return. When people call you a hero, you feel uncomfortable. Heroes are the ones who didn't make it back. You were just lucky enough to survive. The burden of memory becomes heaviest when you are alone. In quiet moments, your mind replays old missions. The channel crossing at 50 feet. The sudden flash of explosions. The desperate evasive maneuvers. Sometimes you wonder why you survived when others did not. Survivor's guilt, the doctors would later call it. At the time, you simply called it life. There are small rituals that keep you grounded. You polish your shoes until they gleam because discipline still matters. You keep emergency supplies in the house. Candles, matches, food, because you know how quickly normal life can collapse. You never waste fuel or food. Shortages taught you too well. These habits baffle your children, but they are part of who you've become. Decades later, when museums ask you to speak about the war, you struggle to find words that fit. How do you explain the peculiar combination of terror and exhilaration that defined combat flying? How do you convey the trust between pilot and navigator when every decision could mean life or death? You try, but you know your audience cannot fully understand. They see medals, photographs, aircraft in glass hangars. They don't smell the sweat-soaked cockpit, or feel the vibration of engines through the seat, or hear the silence when a voice on the radio goes dead forever. The truth is, memory is both a gift and a curse. It keeps alive the faces of friends long gone, the sound of Merlin engines, the pride of missions completed. But it also keeps alive the terror, the guilt, the unanswered questions. You carry both, inseparable like the two sides of a coin. The war has ended. Peace has come. But inside, the battle continues, quiet, invisible, fought in the silence of sleepless nights and the spaces between ordinary days. You survive. You adapt. But you never forget. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, but it never erases them. Decades after the war, you find yourself an old man, your hair white, your hands lined with age, but still steady when you place them on the controls of an aircraft in a museum demonstration. The years have carried you far from the wooden cockpit of a Mosquito, yet in many ways you never left it. Your children grew up in a world that knew peace, not war. They ask questions sometimes, and you tell them stories, edited, softened, reshaped for young ears. Later, your grandchildren listen with wide eyes as you describe the wooden wonder that outran German fighters, the midnight raids over occupied Europe, the strange roar of flying bombs over London. To them, it is history, almost legend. To you, it is memory as vivid as yesterday. You attend reunions when you can. Fewer men show up each year. You recognize the same haunted look in their eyes, though it has faded with time into something gentler. Acceptance, perhaps. You share a drink, laugh at old jokes, toast the ones who didn't come home. The camaraderie returns in those moments, a reminder of the family you once had in the skies. Sometimes museums invite you to speak. You stand before aircraft polished and pristine, preserved behind ropes and glass. Young visitors ask you what it was really like. You try to answer, but how do you explain the taste of fear, the weight of responsibility, the blur between life and death? You talk about speed, about missions, about the Mosquito's beauty. But the truest things, the sleepless nights, the survivor's guilt, the invisible scars, you keep to yourself. The Mosquito itself becomes a legend, written about in books, praised for its design, remembered as one of the most versatile aircraft of the war. When you see one on display, you run your hand along the wooden skin, remembering the vibration of engines, the smell of oil and leather, the way it responded like it could read your mind. It is smaller than you remember, yet somehow greater too, a vessel that carried not just bombs but hope, skill, and sacrifice. Your body reminds you of the war every day. Your hearing is poor, your night vision weak, your joints ache in the cold. But your reflexes remain sharp, and when you close your eyes, you can still feel the Mosquito banking under your hand, wings flexing, engines singing. In dreams, you are young again, the horizon stretching out before you, the world full of danger but also possibility. You think often of those who didn't live to see peace. Their faces remain forever young in your memory, frozen in time, untouched by the years that have weathered you. You carry their absence like a weight and a reminder that the life you lived after the war was bought with their sacrifice. You try to honor it, by raising a family, by living carefully, by teaching gratitude in small, everyday ways. As the years wind down, you realize that legacy is not medals or speeches or history books. It is memory, passed to children, to grandchildren, to strangers who hear your story and carry it forward. It is the quiet understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. It is the reminder that peace is precious because it is fragile, bought dearly and never guaranteed. On quiet nights, when the world around you is still, you sometimes return to those old missions in your mind. The channel crossing at 50 feet, the moonlit landscape of France, the desperate chase after a flying bomb. The fear, the exhaustion, the exhilaration, all of it comes back in flashes. And yet, in the end, what you remember most is not the danger but the camaraderie, the laughter in the mess hall, the nod of trust from your navigator, the knowledge that you were never truly alone in the sky. When sleep finally comes, it carries you back into the cockpit of a Mosquito. The controls are light, the engine smooth, the horizon endless. You are 22 again, alive in a way that only those who flew at the edge of survival can understand. The war is over, but in your dreams, you take flight once more, toward peace, toward memory, toward the future that your courage helped to build. And perhaps that is the truest legacy of all. Not the battles fought, not the bombs dropped, but the reminder that even in the darkest hours, ordinary men can rise to extraordinary heights.